think, Marge. All I need is a title.
Christians like to attempt to invalidate atheist arguments about the existence of God by saying that human knowledge comprises only a certain amount of the entirety of knowledge in the universe, symbolized by a small dot within a very large circle. This line of logic is a fallacy. Human knowledge is not the dot within the circle, it is the circle. As humanity learns more about the universe and its workings, that information immediately becomes part of human knowledge. Now, there might be things in existence that we don't know about because we have not yet discovered them. Take, for example, the continents of North and South America, which were undiscovered until the voyages of Columbus. Human knowledge did not yet encompass these land masses, yet they existed. Once these continents were discovered, that information became part of the entirety of human knowledge, which is everything in and about the universe that humans know. If God exists, he does so in a manner that has been unexplored by humans, but that does not impact the entirety of human knowledge. Now, when you talk about God, Christians consider God to be four things. They consider him to be supernatural, omniscient, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent. Now, there are problems with all four of these things, and when combined together they make God to be an illogical being that can't exist. So, when you debunk the nature of God, you try to debunk all four of these things. So we'll start with the idea that God is supernatural, or immaterial. A thing that is supernatural is neither testable nor observable, and therefore lies outside of science. Something that is testable or observable is not supernatural. Material objects and effects have causation, and that something else is also material. The example given by Bill O'Reilly once was,
Right? Tide goes in, tide goes out. Never a miscommunication. You can't explain that. You can explain why the tide goes in.
Tide goes in, tide goes out.
See, the water, the tide comes in and it goes out, Mr. Silverman.
Maybe
it always
it's
comes
Thor
in
on top of Mount Olympus who's making the tides go in and out.
No, but you can't explain
a scam
that.
and a myth are the same. The
You can't
myth and
explain it.
religion are the same thing. It doesn't matter if I can explain it.
It doesn't?
That doesn't mean that an invisible magic man in the sky is doing it.
And you're free to believe that.
except that we can. Tides are caused by the gravitational pull of the moon on the Earth. Therefore, the observable force, the tides, affects an observable object, the Earth, and it's caused by an observable object, the Moon. Because God is said to be immaterial, anything one can attribute to God could also be attributed to anybody else. There is nothing to say that this other entity or person does not have the ability or aspect. If you said that something was caused by God, I could say it was caused by the force, for example. The notion that something was created or done by God is what is known as an argument from ignorance, meaning that people color God into any space that they do not have a readily understandable answer for. For example, how was the universe created? Scientists will say they don't know, but they believe it was the expansion of the universe known as the Big Bang. Theists say the universe was created by God, and look, he even says so himself in the creation story. The difference between the two ideas just mentioned is that in the case of the Big Bang, there is the possibility of discerning the observable cause and the observable forces and effects. Scientists have been able to determine where they think the Big Bang occurred, and the universe continues to expand because of that effect. In order for some material thing to be created, it must have a material substance, and an observable force must act in the creation. With that in mind, God's creation of the universe should have left a proof of the creation, and we should be able to discern the forces used and perhaps recreate the processes. The fact that anything exists is no more evidence for the existence of the Christian God than it is for Allah, Odin, Ra, Huitzilopochtli, or the Force. So what makes your God so much more believable than them? That was from Dr. Shane. Another aspect of God that Christians will attribute to him is that God is omniscient or all-knowing. If God is all-knowing, then we have no free will, because free will would indicate that we can make decisions that God would not know about. There are several Bible verses stating that we do not have free will, such as Romans 8:29-30, Ephesians 1:4-5, 2 Thessalonians 2:11-13, 2 Timothy 1:9, and Jude 1:4. The Shame video also makes a point at time index 9.35. If you are an all-knowing being, then if there's nothing you don't actually know, then you are not aware that you don't know it, and therefore you cannot be all-knowing. God, being all-knowing, actually shatters the foundation of Christianity. The video article at time index 9.48 makes the point that if God is all-knowing, then he knows what we want. Therefore, what is the point of prayer? At time index 9.55, it states that if life is a test and God already knows the outcome, what is the point in life? If God already knows whether you're saved or not, what is the point in avoiding sin? If you are one of the chosen few, then you will ask for forgiveness and be reconciled to God before you die. If you're not to be saved, then what is the point in asking God for forgiveness anyway? If God was all-knowing, then he knew that the serpent was going to tempt Adam and Eve, and knowing the outcome, he allowed them to sin against him. If God knew all of this, why did he not prevent the outcome by appearing in the Garden of Eden, moving the tree of knowledge, or not having that tree in the location at all? Given that God knew the serpent was going to tempt Adam and Eve, and given that God knew what would happen, why did he punish them, and all of us by extension, for something that he knew was going to happen and did nothing to prevent? Another aspect that Christians attribute to God is omnipotence, or being all-powerful. Of course, there are some fallacies involved with that too. Could God make a stone so heavy that even he could not lift it? If he couldn't, then he is not omnipotent because he could not make a stone that big. If he could, then he is not omnipotent because he would not be able to lift such a stone. Due to this paradox, it is impossible for something or someone to be truly omnipotent. A possible defense to this point is that God couldn't go against his own nature, that being that he is omnipotent. However, if God were omnipotent, then he would be able to go against his own nature, because the very definition of omnipotence is the ability of a deity to have unlimited power, or be able to do anything. A problem then occurs because if God is able to go against his own omnipotent nature, he would by definition not be omnipotent. Also, where in the Bible does it say that God cannot go against his own nature? In fact, some of the verses listed in this writing seem to indicate that he can go against portions of his nature, such as being omnibenevolent. If God doesn't have the ability to go against his own nature, then it's because he doesn't do the logically impossible, because he cannot do them. Therefore, he is not omnipotent. Another point made by myself and others is that God appears personally to be unable to do something that his lowly human creations do all the time: forgive someone who has wronged them. If a person does something wrong toward another person, the wronged person may forgive the perpetrator of the act. Depending on the situation, this might be a partial or total forgiveness. It is usually preceded by an act of repentance, such as an apology for the act, but forgiveness is always a possibility in the middle of human relations. Not so with God, who because of one act of disobedience, cast Adam and Eve out of Eden, and then cursed them with everything from death to birthing pains to the act of having to farm for our vegetables. And by the way, just for being born, every human being also has the same blame for that sin. We Americans have a hard time taking blame for slavery, a practice that ended long before any of us were born. But a theist will willingly accept original sin, hook, line, and sinker, because the repentance and repayment for that sin is the basis for the entire religion. So first, the Hebrews or the Jewish people were supposed to sacrifice certain animals on altars to God on the holy day of the week. That was Old Testament forgiveness. But of course, that was not quite good enough. This was made supposedly better by the sacrifice of God's Son Jesus through his crucifixion at the hands of the Roman state in Palestine, egged on by the Jewish authorities, who found him to be a dangerous threat to their power. If Jesus provided the perfect means to somehow allow God to forgive people's sins, why do we need to believe in Jesus' death on the cross? Perhaps the most well-known Bible verse explains, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life." And that's John 3:16. The problem becomes that God turns into a real braggart over the matter. Believers are compelled to nearly continuously reiterate that they believe that Christ died for their sins. A street preacher who doesn't agree with my lifestyle has asked me on a number of occasions whether I know the gospel of Jesus. I certainly do, unless it has changed in the last 37 years. But apparently I have sinned and now have to endure the entire guilt trip all over again. So, humans can do something simply by saying, "I forgive you," that God cannot do, despite all of the sacrifices and the ultimate sacrifice of sending his own Son to die a horrible death on a cross. Just that in and of itself proves that God is not omnipotent. The fourth aspect that Christians give God, that being omnibenevolent or all good, it also has some fallacies. If God is all good, then he could not be responsible for evil. However, as we have demonstrated, he allowed the temptation of Adam and Eve, thereby allowing for the creation of sin, which would be an evil act. The Bible itself shows that God is directly responsible for evil, or he allows it to happen through someone else. An all-powerful being would be able to do both good and evil, but according to theists, God cannot do evil, therefore he is not omnipotent. In the story of Job, God allows Satan to torture Job to try to get him to renounce his faith. Satan is allowed to afflict Job with diseases, take his family from him, and rob him of his home and possessions. Job does not renounce his faith, and God tells him that he has the right to do horrible things like this simply because he is God. This is in the Dr. Shane's video at time index 13.35. The Shane video also points out that God knew Satan was going to do what he did, and gave him permission to do it, thereby being complicit in the commission of evil acts. The video article then mentions the destruction of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah because the inhabitants of these cities were engaged in horrific sexual immorality. The problem is, as the video points out, not everyone in the city could have been engaged in such activities. Were 2-year-old children having gay sex with other people? If not, then God killed innocent children when he destroyed the cities. In Genesis 18:32 it says, "And then he said, Let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak but once more." Suppose 10 should be found there. And this is Abraham talking to the angels. And he's asking about, what if you find so many innocent people within the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah? Will you still kill everybody in the city, including these 10 innocents? And so he's trying to intercede on the lives of innocent people within the city. So let me start that again. And then he said, "Let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak but once more." Suppose 10 should be found there. And this is referring to the angel, and he said, "I will not destroy it for the sake of 10. And so the Lord went his way as soon as he had finished speaking with Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. So basically, when the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed, either there were less than 10 innocent people there, including children, or God wiped out everybody in the city, men, women, children, innocent or not. This same sort of mass punishment that would also affect innocents, especially children, also crops up in Exodus, where God unleashes plagues upon the populace of Egypt, including children, and those who had nothing to do with the slavery of the Hebrews in Goshen. This would be bad enough, except that God takes things a step further and informs Moses that he will harden Pharaoh's heart against letting the Hebrews go. This is in Exodus 4:21. So basically, Pharaoh didn't have a choice in the matter, and his people got punished for something that God had full control over in any event. None of this counts any of the death, rape, and other atrocities brought upon the people living in the lands of Canaan, modern-day Israel, when God led Joshua and the Hebrews into the lands to conquer the inhabitants. This is in Numbers 31:17 and 18. If God is omnibenevolent, then he could not be responsible for evil. If he was omniscient, he would know where and when evil was occurring. And if he was omnipotent, he could stop it from happening. The question asked by children, why are there bad things in the world, is perhaps the most important question a child could ask their theist parents, because it gets to the very foundation of the religion, the worship of a kind, all-knowing, all-powerful, stern father figure of a God. The answer to the question could possibly invalidate the entire basis for the religion, so the question is usually swept under the rug, so to speak. Most of it is blamed on Satan, actually. The real answer, of course, is that evil exists in the world because God is not omniscient, not omnipotent, and not omnibenevolent, and therefore can do nothing about the evil in the world. But there's one Bible verse that states that God is responsible for evil, and that would be Isaiah 45:7. Then there are biblical verses showing God doing evil by violating free will. And these are verses such as Genesis 20:6-7, Exodus 4:21, Numbers 22:32, Ezekiel 14:9, 2 Thessalonians 2:11 and 12, and Romans 9:14-21. If God is allowed or willing to violate free will, then he is either unwilling or unable to prevent evil, and in some cases he does not allow humans to have a free choice in the matter. Therefore, he is not omnibenevolent. Quite frankly, I think the all-good nature of God is something Christians have simply made up. The most blatant examples of God doing evil things are spelled out in the Bible, yet Christians claim God is all-good. God himself says that he is a jealous God. This is in Exodus 34:14. Some interpretations of that verse go so far as to say that God's name is jealous. Jealousy is the root of a host of evil acts, yet God is all-good. I say that the all-good quality is made up because it makes no sense, given the evidence in the Bible. And God should be able to do evil acts. If God is all good, then he cannot commit evil acts, nor can he change his nature to commit such acts. Therefore, he is not omnipotent. If he is able to commit evil acts, then his words in the Bible make more sense. And the whole all-good notion is the result of Christians exercising stupidly wishful thinking and wanting to have their godly cake and eat it too. In their logic, God can be a jealous God, but an all-good God at the same time. In conclusion,
and fittingly, a guy named Nope Nope asks the following. Or maybe it's a gal, who knows? My question is rather personal since I have a certain struggle when it comes to my own stance on religion. In your videos, I've noticed that you call yourself an atheist. When the subject of your videos throws out a question about God's existence, you simply answer with a decisive no. My question is, what drove you to becoming sure there is no God? With my current knowledge, all I can say is that while a book is certainly bad proof of God's existence, there is no counterproof. So the only thing whose existence we can prove is usually the book, which is always weak proof. You're certainly an intelligent man, so I think you might teach me something on the matter. Well, there you guys go with the flattery again, thank you. I'll try to answer it as best I can. As far as proof goes, that which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. That means that I don't have to spend time disproving something because there was no evidence of it existing in the first place. People can assert anything from God to spaghetti monsters to ghosts to rainbow unicorns. And I'm not going to spend time on disproving either of those because I've seen no effect, trace, or evidence of them. The Bible proves the existence of God no more than the Lord of the Rings proves the existence of hobbits or Star Wars proves the existence of Darth Vader and the Force. Furthermore, I invite you to consider the following conundrum. If God is willing to prevent evil but not able to, then he is not omnipotent. If he is able but not willing, then he is malevolent. Is he both willing and able? Then why is there still evil? Is he neither willing nor able? Then why call him God? That's as good of an answer I could come up with on short notice, so I hope it helps.
The undoomed conundrum seems to sum up the Christian God pretty well. He's impossible to be realistic, and therefore hard to take seriously by anyone who uses a modicum of logic. At least many of the peoples who thought about gods mythicized them as being fallible themselves. Some gods were jealous, some were philanderers, some were vain, all of them were arrogant, and so on. All of these gods were more believable than the Christian notion of a God who is jealous and vengeful, but all good. None of this is a complete knock on Christians in general, especially those who do charitable work in the name of their religion. However, as we have seen, and we'll see in the other Politics City videos, those Christians who want to push their religion onto others are pushing a poisonous delusion.